vast experience in field of laser material processing of different ferrous and non-ferrous materials. After completing his master degree in physics, he has joined BARC training school at Mumbai in 2006 and subsequently joined IGCAR Kalpakam in 2007 at Metallurgy Group. At IGCAR, he has worked in the field of phasor transformation, kinetics and phase field modeling of different nuclear grade materials through experiments and modeling. Over the last 5 years, he is working in the field of laser material processing of different structural and functional materials. He is working on development of different Ni and Fe based materials using laser based additive manufacturing technology for advanced engineering application. For his outstanding contribution, he has received the DAE Young Scientist Award in 2015 and 2 times DAE Group Achievements Award, and he has published more than 50 journal publications. He has more than 50 journal publications and 30 conference proceedings. Now I would request Dr. Arun Kumar Rai sir to start this session and share your valuable thoughts with us. Please, sir.
Thank you very much for kind introduction and inviting me to present work on laser additive manufacturing technology. So now I will be sharing. Can you leave off? Then I can share my. Hello. Yeah.
Sir.
Is it visible?
Yes, sir, visible.
Slides are visible, na?
No. Slide is not visible. Your screen is visible.
No, I have 1 minute. Just a wait. My screen is only visible, not slides.
Yes, sir.
1 minute. Now it is visible?
Not yet, sir.
Not visible?
Not, sir.
1 minute. 1 minute. Just I will now share. Now it is visible?
Yes, sir. Now visible.
Screen is visible, no?
Yes, sir. इसको full screen पे कर दीजिए, sir.
हाँ, 1 minute. Just. Okay, na?
Yes, sir. Now perfect.
Okay. So, good afternoon to everyone. I will be basically covering the basic concept of the laser additive manufacturing with a small introduction of other additive manufacturing technology and how it is different, and then what are the different avenues with coming this technology in future, how it is going to change the manufacturing process, what now we are doing conventionally. If it is succeeded, then the things can be changed. Like we are talking about 4G and 5G, the mobile network. In similar way, this additive manufacturing technology is also going to bring lot of boom in the technological field. So, just I will give a small brief introduction about what is additive and conventional manufacturing. That is what we say subtractive. You know, in subtractive manufacturing, suppose you have a thought of some design of some component, like this is what I am showing. If you have to design this component, you should have a block of that material. And then the block of material, by doing a suitable machining, like cutting or using lathe machine or some other machines, you can make some such design, and then remaining base product you will have like this. So, and by this process, you know, it consumes lot of time, like manpower and machine time, so much thing. And similarly, you will generate lot of. However, if you go for a 3D printing technology, what is now it is going on, in that suppose you have thought a design, what I have told earlier, so you should have only a powder of that material of desired shape, size, and that I will discuss in detail later. And after that, this whatever shape you want to print, you have to just make a CAD model of that, a drawing basically, and then that drawing you have to give a printer just as an input file, and the powder as the input material. It will print the same material, same tool what we have made using a conventional technique. And you will see the waste is very less, and here you will also see time is very required time is less compared to conventional process. So this is the what advantage of this technique. And second thing, it has other more advantages which I will discuss in next slide. So this is the difference between a conventional and 3D printing technology. And if you talk about the cost and compared to conventional, there are two concepts. One is that suppose you compare with the lot size, the number of products suppose you are manufacturing. So you will see that if the number of products required is less, then conventional process demand huge cost. However, if the number of products increases, the conventional cost may go down. That is the advantage of conventional process. However, suppose somewhere some small demand has come from industry, and then conventional process, the person has to pay huge money. That's why it is not affordable. But if you see additive manufacturing, there are two approaches. One is high-end additive manufacturing, one is the general. So you will see that their cost is not going to change, whether it is a small number of product or large number of product. It is going to be constant. This is the advantage of this technique. So if somebody want a small scale production, additive manufacturing would be better technique. Second thing is that product complexity. If you go by complex shape design, you will see that conventional cost process exponentially grows as you increase the complexity of the product. However, in additive manufacturing, it is going to be constant. So in these two aspects, this additive manufacturing is going to be a beneficial process than the conventional. Second thing, if it comes to right side, you will see there is one more comparison is that the parts weight and size and the number of parts, if you see, you will see the additive manufacturing somewhere lies in the corner of this curve. So this cannot create the parts with very big size. That is a limitation of this additive manufacturing. Similarly, number of parts also that conventional may be better, like press sintering or metal injection molding may be better, and for a larger component, this HIP may be better technique. But you will see over 1 decade, the market growth of the additive manufacturing is growing exponentially. You will see that in 2011, it is a US actually market. I'm not telling, even though China and European have difference. So just I am telling a US market, you will see it was less than 2 billion. $2 billion in 2011. Now it has increased somewhere around $15 billion. So in next 10 years, its market will grow like anything. So because this is why it is coming, because due to lot of R&D effort and things, this technology is developing, and people have confidence that we can replace the conventional process if the product size is means desired product is required. Then the conventional process can be replaced with the additive manufacturing. So these are the benefits. What actually I am see here. One important point I will tell you. this additive manufacturing process is completely digital, and you know that in coming future everything is going to be digital. Like if 5G comes, so many things you have to do in digital world. So this technique is basically suitable for a digital world. So digital scanning, digital design, digital engineering, and digital manufacturing. This is what is required in coming future. So for this purpose, additive manufacturing is going to be one of the best suited technology. And there are 4 things what I can tell you, like manufacturing on demand. Suppose some prototype design has come. If you have to go for conventional, it will cost a lot of money. However, here without adding much inventory of spare part, we can manufacture. Second thing, sometimes what happens, some part has failed. In conventional, it is difficult to repair, but in additive manufacturing, it is very easy to repair that part, damaged part. Third thing is the manufacturing end use component. Manufacturing end use component matlab means if somebody want that I want certain design, can you design? In conventional, it's difficult to do that for a small scale, but here this can be easily done. Similarly, what I have told, small batch production, that is easier with the additive than conventional. So these are the basically a benefit of a additive manufacturing. However, it has lot of challenges still, which I will be telling you later. What are the challenges are there with additive and how it can be rectified and improved upon. So now there are various methods actually used in additive manufacturing. Just 1 minute back, I will go. Here you can see the corner. You will see this is the oldest additive manufacturing technology used in India. Like in the pot maker is making some pot using a clay simply. This is basically one of the additive manufacturing. He made the green body and then sintered it and then get the final product. So this is what is desired. So if you see in additive manufacturing process, there are a lot of methods are used. Like one of the methods is a material extrusion. You can see here right side in the curve, this is the feed material which is being fed, and there is a heater element through which when it is fed, it is liquid is molten, and then with the help of support material, this whatever desired part you want to make, you can make. And this build platform is basically shifted to increase the along the z direction height of the component in 2D, and then similarly this is a 2D, and then similarly 3D, how you can make it just by shifting it. So but you will see this technique is not suitable for all the material. It is basically suitable for some polymers and low melting material. Similarly, you go to next process, that is called material jetting. Sorry, this is the material jetting. In material jetting, instead of using a separate support material and build material both are coaxially fed, and then it is printed, and by using UV light it is cured, means cured and made solid form. And this way also you can print the 3D part, but this is again limited to low melting material like some polymers and so some such thing. Then next is the sheet lamination. In sheet lamination also same thing. Means you have a materials in liquid form, and you have a laser with a galvan scanner. Just you scan whatever desired shape you want to make, you can print it and make. But again, this is limited to polymers only. Then next is the binder jetting. Sheet lamination. That was the bad polymerization, sorry. And this is the sheet lamination. In sheet lamination, again the sheet of a polymer is used as an input material, and then laser beam is used to just whatever design shape you want, over that only laser beam will move, and you can print the desired product, and again you shift along the z axis to make the 3D. But again the issue is that it cannot be used for metals and ceramic material. Then next is the binder jetting. This binder jetting actually is very good technique for if you want to make a ceramic material. So in that, what you do, you use the ceramic powder, overlay it, and use some liquid binder. And then after adding that, you make a green 3D part, like what clay that one part was made. Similar way, you just use liquid binder and bind it, and then later on you can do sintering and achieve the final product. But thing is, what happened in this technique, when you do the sintering, this binder get evaporated and this lead to porosity in the material. When if suppose you don't want a porosity, then this technique is not good. So if ceramics are there and where certain amount of porosity is desired, this technique is going to be good. But for metals and all those things, this technique cannot be used. Now next two techniques, that is direct energy deposition and powder bed fusion. These are the two techniques which are used especially for printing the metallic based material. That is what we today use at several engineering applications. They are actually metallic material, and for them these two techniques, that is direct energy deposition and powder bed fusion, are used. So in direct energy deposition, there is just I am defining in laser. If you suppose your source is laser based or electron beam based or some other based, so there are two techniques. One is the powder based. Powder bed means you will have a bed over which the powder is sprayed, and then you move the laser as per your design of the product. Whatever desired shape you want to make, you can just move the laser. Just I will come in more detail next slide. So this is a powder bed fusion technology or powder bed technology simply called. Here there are three processes. One is laser beam melting, electron beam melting, or 3D printing or inkjet printing. That is green part. Whatever I was telling in the binder jetting, the similar thing is that, but here it is little different. So these are the three way you can do the powder bed. Second is the direct energy deposition or blown powder technology. This blown powder technology means your powder and the laser beam, electron, whatever the heat source, is fed coaxially together on the substrate. But in the powder bed technology, powder is first spread over the substrate and then laser is moved. So powder and laser beam are not coming. Advantage is what is there, in powder bed fusion you can make lot of complex shapes. You have lot of design freedom, like this you can see in the corner of this. But in direct energy deposition, what you will see, there is one of the important advantage is that if suppose you want to do some cladding or some coating up some material on other material like tube, you cannot do this in powder bed. You can only do with direct energy deposition where powder and laser beam are coaxially fed. Okay, so this is one of the most advantage of direct energy technology. Again, based on the heat source, if you see, there is a lot of I have already explained the laser powder bed fusion. If you use electron beam, it is called EBPBF. If you then you laser direct energy deposition, that is what I have discussed earlier. Then electron beam direct, that is just depending on your heat source. Both technologies are classified and used by many people, but frequently used technology is laser powder bed fusion and laser direct energy deposition. Then if suppose your heat source is plasma, then it's called plasma arc directed energy deposition. If suppose it is a heat source is gas tungsten arc, then it is a zeta DED. That is this technique is used as a hybrid welding technique in recently. So this is one of them. Next is gas metal arc direct energy deposition. So this is basically classification based on your heat source. Now henceforth I will be only focusing on laser based deposition, because other techniques if I cover it is more than, it will take 2 hours. So I am only focusing on laser based technique, that is one is laser powder bed fusion and laser direct energy deposition. So this is the first slide. This is a powder bed fusion method. So what I have told you here there is your substrate base over which the powder is first sprayed by a means of a powder roller, and then laser beam is moved over that using some galvo scanner. Just laser beam is directed, and when the galvo scanner moves according to a program given, and then you can print the material and similarly again pull down the substrate and again spread the material, and by this you can print the 3D products. Okay, just I will show one video how it looks, and you can see this is the one of the video. Sorry, just a minute now. Just a minute, I am not able to run video. Wait, no? Just I will run the video. So this is, you see, this is actually a powder bed fusion technology, where you will see This is one printer machine, which is a powder bed fusion machine by some company. So in that, what you will see, suppose you want to design this a complex shape by powder bed fusion. So you have to make basically, see here, this is a powder is overlaid over the substrate. This laser beam is moving according to whatever shape you want to design. So it will move. This is moving with help of galvo scanner. Means laser beam is fed through that, and it is moving accordingly. Okay. So like that, you now keep on moving in Z direction. Final product you will have like this. So this is the, you can see this entire product is printed in one stage. But suppose you have to do same thing in a conventional process, it may take lot of time. 1 minute. Next comes to laser direct energy deposition. In laser direct energy deposition, I have already told you that both powder and laser beam are fed coaxially. So this is basically what this is the advantage of this technique, because here suppose if you have a job where the substrate is not a planar substrate, then it will be difficult to do printing using a powder bed technology. But in this you can do, because your powder and your laser beam are coming parallelly on the substrate. And this has one more advantage. Here you can print the thickness of, suppose in first time one layer you are printing, how much maximum thickness you can achieve. In powder bed fusion, what is there? Maximum thickness you can go 50 micron to 100 micron. Beyond that, if you go, it will create lot of defect in the material, and that I will discuss when it come later. That is a disadvantage of the powder bed. But in direct energy deposition, you can at least 500 to 600 micron thickness you can print at one time. So the throughput is higher in direct energy deposition. That is one. But one of the main disadvantage of this technique is that it cannot print as complex shape as powder bed fusion can do. So both have their advantage and disadvantage, and it can be used as per the requirement. Well, suppose if the technology is not possible to do with the direct energy, we can go for powder bed fusion. Otherwise, you can use direct energy. Here also one video I will just show you. Just you can see. So you can see here, this is a laser beam, and this is your powder and your protective gas, all coming together on the substrate. Okay, this is your substrate. Now both will see actually this your substrate is moved with the help of a CNC stage, which is actually a 5-axis provision it has. So it can move XYZ and theta phi it can move. So suppose some shape you want to just tilt it the substrate, you can tilt with the help of CNC stage. So with this you can print whatever desired shape you want, whatever things you want to make. Like you can see here, this is one of the tube is being printed with thin wall. So you will see how geometrical control is here. Means you will not see this. You can see here with after printing this kind of design, it is possible to do. And even though small repair or somewhere some finishing you want to do, you can easily do with this technique. Like you can also see the bending of the this some part. Suppose some part is there, how the curve has been created with this technique, you can see this is very challenging actually. So but now it is possible with the direct energy deposition. Then you can see the over some design you want to make over the final product, that also you can do later stage. Like see the after that this design is done over that using the same technique without means distorting your component. So this is the advantage of this technique. Now in direct energy also you will see there are two approaches. One is that type of feedstock. One is the powder based, like what I have been showing you. This is a powder based. Other is the wire based. See, powder based and wire based, when it is required, suppose you are using electron beam as a source, then you know that when you use electron beam, a vacuum condition is required, and the vacuum is of order of 10 power minus 8 to minus 9 torr. So there, if you use as a powder, you cannot maintain the vacuum. So when you are going electron beam as a source, then you should go for a wire-based feedstock rather going to powder-based. Then similarly, heat energy can be heat energy like this is laser type you can use. Here you can use laser, you can use electron beam, or you can use plasma, or you can use electric arc. And second is the kinetic energy, means this is the heat energy. Second is kinetic, just you accelerate your powder particles with some velocity. When it goes and is stuck on your substrate, it gets deposited. That is called supersonic based deposition. This technique actually very useful where if you don't want the melting process to happen, because sometimes melting lead to some problem like dissimilar material. If you want depositing in dissimilar material, the formation of different unwanted phase will happen if you go to melting route. So that normally the melting route is avoided. In that scenario, you can use kinetic energy based like cold spray technology to deposit dissimilar material. So in direct energy also, you can have various options. Then now I will come to what are the different steps actually involved during additive manufacturing process. You will see that during additive manufacturing process, first part comes to part design. Suppose some part you want to design, you have to first think that what exactly you want. Suppose here I am giving one of the example. This part has to be designed. Okay, so if this part has to be designed or printed. This has to first we have to create a software for that. Means you have to create a STL file that is called .stl. Okay, this full form is stereolithography. Okay, this was the first when additive manufacturing technology was developed. That's why this name comes STL file. So first you have to create a STL file, and then you have to do physical build up. Means after creating your STL file, you just make sliced, means layer by layer. Since you are going to print this layer by layer, so you have to do slicing of this. After slicing of this system, this input you have to give through computer to the machine, and the machine will then finally start printing, and final product when you get, then after getting the final product again it requires a lot of checking. Like first is the surface roughness. Suppose you have printed some part and it don't have the desired surface roughness, then you have to do some machining, and then that machining, by doing machining, you can remove the unwanted surface roughness on the surface. And then next is the part separation. Once you have printed the component on the substrate, now from the substrate your part you have to remove. That is one of the also very challenging technology for additive manufacturing, I would say, compared to conventional technology. In additive manufacturing technology, replacing a part or removing the part from the substrate is a very challenging. And once you have removed the part, then you have an intermediate step like machining you have done, then surface finishing you have done. And suppose even after doing this, the desired mechanical and microstructures are not there, then you have to do some secondary processes like heat treatment, and this entire thing come under quality assurance. Means entire process after printing that the component has to be qualified for some desired job. Suppose if the desired mechanical property is not achieved, then this process has to be again done to get the desired product. So initially to get this, small trials are being done in additive manufacturing so that the desired property if achieved with the given process parameter, then only we can go for a bulk production in additive. It is similar to your conventional process also, but here it start from the scratch. Means everything you have to start from the powder, then you have to deposit and then qualify each part, and finally then you test the mechanical property and microstructure. If it is everything is okay, then only you can qualify the product. So these are the different steps which actually required to be done during additive manufacturing process of a engineering component. Then now it comes to what are the actually parameters in laser additive manufacturing process need to be monitored. And you will see that there are two things have to be monitored. One is the input parameter, second is the output parameter. In the input parameter, first and foremost comes laser source. See, laser source is a very important thing because that The wavelength of laser actually decide whether this material can be printed or not, because the absorption of a laser beam by a metal actually is very challenging, and this comes because the metals, you know, they are conductor, they have lot of free electrons, and due to this free electrons, this laser is a electromagnetic wave. When it interacts with the electrons, it can repel it out. So material absorption is poor if the material has high thermal conductivity. So you will see, if you are going to print a high thermal conductivity material like copper and aluminum, the job becomes very challenging to print it by laser. So to do that, sometime what they do, they refer to have a different wavelength, like longer wavelength has more reflection than the shorter wavelength. So if you want to print a high conducting material, it is better to go for a shorter wavelength like green laser. And suppose you want just a simple iron or nickel based alloys or some ceramic materials or some low conducting material, simple your 1 micron wavelength laser is suitable, means IR region. But if any high conducting material is there, you cannot use just IR region because it reflects more than 80% light. So 20% absorption sometimes is not enough to melt and make the product. But still, by optimizing some other way, this with the given wavelength it can be used, but it is challenging. Second is mode of the laser. Mode of laser means whether it is a pulse or continuous. So you will see in most of the additive manufacturing, CW laser are preferred than the pulse laser. Okay, but today you will see some of the companies are giving a pulse laser system also for additive manufacturing, but they have some advantage and disadvantage that depends on your requirement. Third is the beam profile. Beam profile means, you know, the laser beams are sometimes Gaussian, sometimes flat beam profile. So Gaussian beam, if you use the Gaussian beam at the top, only the maximum intensity is there. However, in flat type, flat profile, uniform intensity will be. Suppose I have used a laser beam of 3 mm diameter. Okay, so if you put a Gaussian beam, you will see the center of that have more energy and peripheral will have less energy. However, in flat beam profile, entire area will have the same energy. So this flat beam profile generally is preferred to avoid the non-uniform melting. Okay. Then fourth is the beam quality. You might have heard that some people use simply NdArc laser, some people use disc laser, some people use fiber laser. So why this kind of different lasers? Some people use CO2 laser. Okay. So you will see why different lasers are. The reason is the beam quality. Beam quality of different lasers are different. Actually, if you use a CO2 laser, it has a poor beam quality. So for material processing point of view, CO2 laser generally not preferred. But if you go for a fiber laser or disc laser, where the beam quality is very, very good, so there the material processing is much better. So you will see most of the industry who are supplying the additive manufacturing machines, they normally prefer a fiber coupled laser, not coupled, fiber laser. So this is the one of the important parameter has to be seen when you are going to do additive manufacturing of some metallic metal. Then next comes to atmosphere. So when your chamber is there, suppose what gases you are using, means the conductivity of gas, how the gas is going to take away the excess heat from there, and how it is going to protect the melt pool from the present of suppose some atmosphere, there is oxygen is there. If suppose you are not using some protective gas, your melt pool will be contaminated and then it will get oxidized. So that will lead to detrimental problem with your component. And fourth is the environment and platform. Sometimes what happen, you know, if you some material you will see, suppose I am having a substrate material which thermal expansion is much higher than the my deposited material. What will happen? Due to temperature difference, the crack will develop in the deposited product. Okay. So for that purpose, what we do to avoid that, we do preheating of the substrate. When you do preheating, the delta T will be reduced, and due to this, the generation of residual stresses will be less as a result of difference in thermal expansion, and that can lead to minimum crack formation or porosity formation. Next is the chamber contamination. That is what I told you. Oxygen. The oxygen has to be lowest. If your material is very prone for oxidation, like titanium alloys, or chromium based alloys. So you have to do the entire process in a closed chamber with either vacuum condition or with some flowing inert gas atmosphere like argon gas. And then next is suppose you are using a gas flow, means under inert gas atmosphere, then gas flow rate also is a very important parameter which decide the final product. Next comes to material condition. Material condition means whether you are using pure material or you are using some alloy. When you are using alloy, in alloy what happens, sometimes some alloys are prone to form some intermetallic phases, or sometimes they are not suitable. So suppose you are doing multi-material. In multi-material, what may happen? Suppose one metal is not betting to other metal. That means bettability, or you can say the surface tension difference is there. Then again, the material will not be properly deposited. Once the melt pool form, if it is not betting your substrate, it will form the some globules over that, and that globules will lead to porosity formation. I will discuss more detail when I go to later. Then your powder characteristics also play important role on the final product, like shape and size. See, most of the additive manufacturing process we use spherical shape, gas atomized particles, and the size also. Suppose you are using powder bed fusion, your size should not be more than 40 micron. So we use 10 micron to 40 micron powder particle size distribution. However, if you are using direct energy deposition, so we don't go for a smaller particle, because you are feeding the powder along with the laser beam. So if the powder size is very small, it will get agglomerated, okay, and then it will not flow properly. So to have a better flow through the nozzle, we prefer a larger powder particle size. That is, we normally have 45 micron to 100 micron, okay. And then powder should be spherical. If you are using direct energy deposition, we prefer a spherical powder particles, because they will have a better flowability. And if you are using powder bed fusion, even the non-spherical powders are okay. But this also play very important role on your final product in terms of porosity or crack formation or final quality of the product. Okay. Then powder feed rate and layer thickness. Already I have told you. In direct energy deposition, you are coaxially feeding the powder along with the laser. So you cannot feed either very high by very high amount of powder or very low amount of powder, because both are going to create a problem. If powder is very less and your energy is constant, it will create a turbulent melt through, which will flow and it does not form the proper shape. Okay. Or if you are feeding very high amount of powder, then unmelted powder can be left, and that lead to porosity formation. Similar thing if you go to powder laser powder bed fusion technology. There, since you are overlaying the powder over the substrate, so the thickness of the layer also decide. If suppose you are using very thin layer, again the melt pool dynamics may be difficult, means turbulent, and that can lead to non-uniform deposition. And if you use very high thickness, again this will lead to unmelted powder particle, and that can lead to porosity formation. And next is the powder purity. Suppose you are ordering with some vendor for powder. If suppose you have ordered for 99.99 and he has given you some impure powder or some, then you are not going to get a desired product quality. Okay. So all these parameters one has to monitor when you are doing additive manufacturing. Next is the laser process parameter. What are the laser important process parameter and how they will affect the final product? This again I will discuss in coming slides, but now here I can see this is the one is the most important is the laser power. See, every material cannot be melted at the same laser power, so that decided by the melting of the material. So if it is a very high melting material, and second is the reflectivity of the material. Suppose your material, though it may be very high melting, like you take alumina or some ceramics, they can be even melted with small laser power because their reflectivity is very poor, means they absorb more than 80% laser power. So it can be, I can melt a ceramic with 250, 300 watt of power, but same with the same power, I cannot melt a steel, because you know steel has the iron based, it is metal based. So in metal the reflectivity is 60%, only 40% is absorption is there. So with the same power I cannot melt. So this laser power has to be decided as per the melting temperature as well as the reflectivity and absorption of the material. So this is the one. Then next is the scan speed. How the laser beam, how fast you are moving, that also decide your melt pool profile and the porous defect formation or defect things that I will again discuss. And next is the scan strategy. Scan strategy means whether you are linearly scanning the laser over the substrate, or you are one layer is you are scanning in one direction, next layer you are just rotating by 90 degree, or you have some other angular rotation like 67 degree or some other rotation you can adopt, because this also play very important role on residual stress development in the material as well as the microstructure of the material and your defect formation. So these are the important. Then next is the overlap index. This overlap index basically the laser beam. Suppose I am using 3 mm spot diameter of laser beam. So how much I should overlap means how, whether I should overlap 50% or 60% or 70% or 90%, that again decided by the materials melt pool profile and several things. So this also being optimized. Suppose how we deposit, you can see we deposit first single layer, okay, then we overlap and deposits single layer, means first single layer and then multi-layer in single platform. So this you can see the overlap of laser beam. So sometimes if you are excessively overlapping or less overlapping, this can lead to defect formation in the metal. So this has to be optimized before printing the final product in 3D like this. So you can see one of the actual example I am seeing here. These are the single tracks are deposited, and then based on the single track information, we actually cut this along the cross section and see the melt pool profile. You can see here. You can see this is the melt pool profile with respect to laser power. If you come from the top to bottom, you can see the laser power being increased from 100 watt to 195 watt. You can just see that with increasing the laser power, the depth of the melt is increases. Means this is actually basically conduction. When it is just a small part of substrate is melted, this is called conduction mode of the melting, and this is a keyhole mode. So what happened? If you go with conduction mode, sometimes your component may get detached from there. So you should have adequately substrate melter so that it can get binded with that. And if you keep on increasing too much, this keyhole formation can lead to porosity formation in the metal. So neither we can go very high melting, high power, or nor we can go very low power. So this and then this, if you move along this, is actually increasing the scan speed. But for a given power, when I am increasing scan speed, you can see the melt profile is reducing. Means I am not giving enough time to melt the material. So with optimization of your power and scan speed, you can get the desired melt profile, which can lead the better product without any defect formation. So this is what first we print a single layer and then analyze the single layer by microstructure and microscopy and see if there is no porosity formation. Then we do multi-layer deposition, and then finally product like this it can be built. So you can see lot of efforts are required first to make the prototype component. Once the prototype component is built, then you can make the material in lot without any problem. Then next comes to output. What are the output parameter one has to look? One is that first we have to look the single track, like what I am telling. We have to analyze this. If it is desired, then we have to go for the geometrical parameters like height, width, and depth. Whatever like single track, height, width, because it decides the final product. And next we look the metallurgical and geometrical homogeneity. Metallurgical means so that there is any microstructural issues are there or some defect formation are there. Then whether the geometry is getting distorted or proper geometry is formed. Then the melt pool profile, like I have told, conduction mode and keyhole mode, because keyhole mode is not preferred because it leads to porosity formation, and a conduction mode with poor bettability also not preferred because it will lead to detachment. So all these things has to be looked before final printing. Okay. Then next is a powder consolidation area, means basically heat affected zone. When you are printing that, so some of the powder that will not melt, but it will be sintered. So that sintered powder area can lead to defect formation. Okay. Then on the final product parameter, what we look? Geometry tolerances and roughness. Suppose some tolerance I have given. So far in additive manufacturing, maximum geometry tolerances are 0.1 mm. If somebody achieve 100 micron, that is a very good job. Then second is the defect and crash formation, that has to be optimized, and then microstructure like grain size and their orientation also play a very important role on mechanical property. So these things has to be looked before giving a use for a industrial application. Okay, so all these parameter one has to look in detail. Then next, I will now whatever I have been telling you now here, some of the critical parameters I will take and discuss how they are going to play a role on your building a component of metal. So first I have already told you the laser wavelength. Okay, so you can see this is the what in schematic of a powder bed fusion method. Suppose I have overlaid a powder. So what are these terms? I am just like scan velocity, how the with what velocity your laser is moving, then what is the laser power, then highest distance, basically the overlap between the two laser beam is called highest distance. And then this is the what I have called laser scan pattern, means whether you are scanning like this or you are scanning linearly, that is called your scan pattern. And then your powder feed rate or layer thickness, and then scanning, all this how they are going to play a role on your final product, I will discuss one by one. So first you take the wavelength. Now here I am giving you absorption of the different material. You can see here aluminum, gold, steel, iron, and moly are there. You can see if you take aluminum, you will see that maximum absorption for aluminum is 0.1 micron wavelength. Means if I take 1 micron wavelength, like what conventionally we use Nd:YAG laser or YB doped fiber laser, their wavelength is 1 micron. So their absorption is very less than 5%. Okay. So this is not suitable at all to do the additive manufacturing processing of the aluminum. Similarly, you can see your gold. Gold is also high conductive material. You can see it has a poor absorption around 1 micron. So this is a in market what we most of the laser get, we get this, but absorption is very poor, so you cannot process. So in that case, if you have a laser with lower wavelength like green laser, they may be suitable to do the material processing of these kind of material. However, if you take iron, steel, moly, you will see that even around 1 micron, they have 40% absorption. You can see. So that's why, and these are the most of the engineering material, what we use, nickel-based alloy, iron-based alloy. So they can be comfortably printed using a laser with 1 micron wavelength without any issue, because they have enough absorption that can lead to good printing. Okay. Second is the, you can see even though you take two material, polycarbonate and copper, absorption and wavelength, you can see that copper has the under important material copper. You can see copper has a minimum absorption, means less than 5% for 1 micron wavelength. However, if you could come to lower side, it has, so copper also can be printed only for a lower wavelength material like green laser. And similarly, if you take polymers also, polymer also has a poor absorption. However, it has higher absorption and both sides. So here, if you take CO2 laser, CO2 laser wavelength is 10 micron. So CO2 laser can be easily used for this material. So if I was telling the laser source is very important. So you take CO2 laser or fiber laser or disc laser, that is one beam quality, and the other is the wavelength side. So if you took CO2 laser can be very nice for printing a polymer material. Okay. So this is the role of different wavelengths and the material. So when we are going to do some material processing, we have to critically look the wavelength role. Then next comes energy density. Means see, I have told laser power scan, has power feed rate, and scanning study. See, all these things can be combined together. That is called energy density. That is laser power divided by scan velocity, hash distance, and thickness layer. This is called generalized parameter, which has to be obtained when you are printing a material. So whenever we print some material, we try to find out this parameter. So if this parameter is same, whatever you change here, it doesn't matter. So whenever we report to some industry, we report this parameter. See, somebody can have different thickness, accordingly velocity can change, laser power can change, height spacing can change, but then different people can report different things. So that's why to avoid this, people look for the energy density. There is a combined parameter which can be uniquely used for a given material. Okay, so always has to be given energy density parameter rather giving this kind of individual laser power scan, because if you alter one of them, entire thing it may be same. I can have different combination of this, I can produce the same this. Okay, so always we have to look this. One has to look this. Then I will now come how I was telling na ki when your melt pool profile, suppose effect of the laser power, how laser power and scan velocities are going to play a role on defect formation in the metal. You can see, I was telling you, if you use very high laser power, okay, if you are in this domain, means I am having very high laser power, but my scan velocity is very less. Okay, what happened in that case? You will end up having keyhole mode of melting. Okay, when keyhole mode of melting happens, what will happen? The gas also, since you are using as a protective environment, this gas will be trapped inside. Okay, inside the material melt pool, and this will be left there, and that will lead to formation of a pores. So that's why a excessive keyhole mode is avoided when you are doing printing. And suppose you have reduced your laser power, you have increased the scan velocity, that also is not desired. You can see here, you will see the unmelted powder. Here down is not melted at all. Suppose my layer thickness or powder fade rate is high, okay, and scan velocity is less. So I am not giving enough time to melt. I am moving laser very fast, so it is not getting time to melt entire thing. So you will again have a porosity formation. So this porosity formation and this porosity formation, actually they look different. I will just show you later how you can say that this porosity is due to unmelted powder or due to the keyhole mode. Okay, so the desired operating window one has to find out, and this comes somewhere in between. Okay, here you will see no porosity formation is observed. So this power and scan velocity has to be achieved for printing a material by optimizing the process parameter. So that is the one most important job has to be done in additive manufacturing. So now I will show you, you can see how you can say that the material has the keyhole porosity formation or lack of fusion defect. So if the pore shape you will see in the optical microscope or ACM, if they are spherical in nature, you just simply can say this is the due to entrapment of the gas and basically a high power you have used. So it is a keyhole mode based porosity formation. If you have some uneven shapes, those shape kind of porosities are seen, they are basically due to non-melting. So you have not used, either you have used less power or you have used very high scan speed, that can lead this kind of defect formation in the material. Okay, so this just by looking at the microstructure one can recognize. And this we have to minimize. Means suppose I am printing material, my porosity should be less than 1%. Means less than 1% is only desired. If it is more than that, you cannot proceed because that can lead later on problems if it is a very critical component. Okay. Then why in keyhole mode this kind of issue comes? Means why porosity forms? There are two governing parameters. One is called Marconi force. You might have heard this Marconi force. In that there are two things. You know, this is the surface tension of the material. Okay, so you will see the surface tension of material with temperature. You will see it is decreasing, and when temperature decreases, it is increasing. Okay, so what happens? Suppose this is my melt pool has formed. So then this, due to surface tension effect, this melt pool will flow outward. Okay, this is outward flow. And second is the recoil pressure. The pressure and these also follow the similar trend like this. This is the maximum, this is the minimum. So these two opposite factors work together. So recoil pressure will work down and Marconi effect will lead to flow the material outside. So if you have excess melting, then that can lead to formation of keyhole kind of defect. That is what I have shown you. So this is the two parameter which play a role of formation. So what will happen when you are going deeper and deeper? So this material will not able to fill over here due to Marconi effect. Okay. However, this recoil pressure will keep on penetrating down, but due to Marconi effect, material will flow outward, and this area will be left vacant if the gas is there, and that lead to formation of pores. Okay. The next come to effect of hatch spacing on the your processing window. Like earlier I have told, this region and this region will lead to formation of a defect of porosity. So here also you will see, if you use very large hatch spacing, so you will end up with the non-melting of the material. If you use very small hatch spacing, you will also end up with the defect formation in the material, because the melt will become very turbulent with smaller hatch spacing, and that lead to dominant effect of the Marconi flow. Okay, so that's why it is avoided. Means you cannot go very for a given laser power, I will say, for a given laser power and scan velocity, if you change your hatch spacing, your operating window is going to change. If you have a, you can see here, there are three regions are there. Okay, the then operating window will change according to your hatch spacing. Then next comes to thickness, layer thickness of the your material. Suppose I am using a powder bed fusion, then how my thickness of the layer is going to play a role on this operating window. So if you are a thinner layer, then your operating window can be wider. Means you have a lot of wider area you can do the processing. If you have a thicker layer, your operating window will be thinner. Means you will not have lot of avenues. Means the scan velocity and power you cannot vary much. So this also play an important role on defect formation. So you have to basically get this optimized window for printing the material. Now it comes to, suppose you have printed the material. Okay, then what are the things one has to look? Okay, means during experiment what you have to look, and then after the experiment what one has to look. So you know there are this is a well known thing: process, structure, and property. These three things has to be correlated together to get a desired product. Okay, so first we do experiment. In experiment what we do, in situ phase and stress analysis we do, then 3D reconstruction of anisotropic microstructure and defect if it is found, and then finally when you have printing the material, how the temperature profile, heating, cooling rate is going to decide the final product also has to be looked. Okay, then this is your process property, and then this is structure, means 3D reconstruction, whatever the microstructure you have obtained, that is going to, then finally you have to measure the properties. In properties what you will do, mechanical properties you will do, and then how the mechanical properties are affected by your microstructure are so many things. And then any phase transformation is happening, means suppose some, because laser process you know it is a non-equilibrium process. Okay, so in non-equilibrium process it is very likely that we are going to end up with a non-equilibrium phases which may not be desired for the actual operation. So before doing this one has to simulate by using theory and modeling whether if I am going to print this material of this alloy, this composition, you have to look the phase diagram of the material and do the modeling and see whether for a given cooling rate, whether the desired microstructure with desired phase you are going to get or not. That prerequisite information we have to get. Okay, suppose this material is very important for some industrial application, like suppose I am making some component of a ultra supercritical power plant. Okay, you know in our ultra supercritical power plant we are using lot of nickel based superalloys. Okay, and nickel based superalloys, you know, they are characterized by the some phases like aluminum, titanium, aluminum nickel phases like Ni3Al, Ni3Ti. They are the specific, they call gamma prime, gamma double prime phases. If suppose those phases are not properly formed during additive manufacturing process, then printing of this material using additive is not useful at all, because if you are not, those phases are not forming, you will not get desired property of that nickel based superalloy. That's the name superalloys come, because they have super properties because of formation of disordered phases. So if those phases are not formed as per the desired microstructure, so then it is not useful. So first we have to do this non-equilibrium kinetic analysis and see whether they will form or not. If they are not forming, then what else you have to do? Suppose you have to do some heat treatment or something, whether with the heat treatment you are able to form or not, those has to be looked. So in the additive manufacturing, this is the one of the important part come post processing. What I have told you, the different steps involved in the additive manufacturing. This is the post processing, means once you have printed the component, all these things you have to look. And before doing this, one has to do modeling and have idea whether whatever I am going to do, whether this desired thing will come or not. And suppose as per the modeling it is coming, but still sometime during actual experiment it has not come, then what is the recipe to get that desired property? So those things has to be looked properly. Okay. Next comes to qualification of a build product. Means if suppose you have printed some component, so how you qualify? This qualification actually depend on several things. One is the how critical that component you have to look. Means suppose the component whatever I have printed, if it is going to use for some application where the failure of the component does not affect the operation of the system or does not lead to any personal danger, means somebody's life is not in danger due to that component. So those kind of components are non-critical. So for them, too much means the stringent criteria of the qualification is not very high. So those components can be printed and used easily. But suppose your level of criticality increases, then this qualification of the material becomes difficult. Like you have a semi-critical where the failure would reduce overall strength of the equipment or system, but it does not, but loss of the system or in danger of the person would not occur. Means system ka kuch loss is not going to happen and somebody's life is not going to be in danger. This is called semi-critical. There certain amount of qualification has to be done. And next come critical. Suppose the failure can lead the loss of property as well as the loss of human, then this become very critical, and there the component printed by the additive manufacturing has to be critically assessed, what I have already discussed in the previous slides. Okay, so then only we can say okay, this component can be used. And so this qualification of a component depends on the nature of a criticality, means how critical your component is and where it is going to be used. So that input feedback has to be given by the user to the printer personnel. Sir, this is what I need and this is my requirement. If it doesn't meet, this component cannot be used. So the engineer who is going to build a component, he has to look all the aspects, he has to show the proof in terms of characterization, in terms of several things, then only that material can be used. Okay. So finally, see, I have discussed so many things, means how the different parameters are going to play a role on the product quality in terms of porosity, composition change, residual stress. So how these things can be managed by changing the process parameter. Here one recipe I have given with the based on experience, how people can, suppose problem encountered, keyhole porosity is encountered. Okay, so what is our primary approach? First simple thing is that just reduce the power. I have told that when you have a high power, then your melt pool will be deeper, and when it is deeper due to Marconi effect and the recoil pressure, the gas gets trapped inside. Okay, so the simple concept is just reduce the power. If it is not working with that, then second approach is keep the power same, increase the laser velocity, or do the remelting or reheating of that. This is a secondary approach to minimize this keyhole porosity. So this is the experience based, means process based experience. People have developed this process for any metal processing using laser. Secondly, lack lack of fusion porosity, suppose it has come, then what is the first strategy to reduce? First is that reduce the line spacing. Means, you know, if line spacing means the overlap of the two laser beam is very high, very less, means suppose 20% or 30% overlap you are doing, means the 60-80% area is unmelted. So that's why you are getting a unmelted porosity. So what you do, you increase means line spacing you reduce, means दो के बीच आप line spacing reduce if you do, then your porosity can be. Then second is, sometimes what happen, if layer thickness or powder feed rate is very high, then again due to unmelting of the powder, it leads to porosity formation. So in that scenario, what you do, you just reduce the thickness of the, suppose you are using powder bed fusion, you will reduce the layer thickness. Suppose you are using direct energy deposition, just reduce the powder feed rate. So this problem can be solved. However, still if it is not solving, then second strategy is reduce the laser velocity, that is called scan speed. Or if you reduce basically scan speed, you are allowing lot of time to laser to be there so that melting can happen. Or you can increase the laser power. Rather increasing velocity, you increase the laser power, so enough power is there to melt it. Or if it is not working with this both, then you can go for remelting or reheating of the build component. That sometimes works and reduce the porosity formation due to unmelting. Then next is the composition change. Suppose some desired composition wanted, but the composition is changed. Then in that scenario, what you are going to do? There are two things. You reduce the laser power. Suppose the laser power is high, then big, large melt pool formation is there. Then dilution actually happens. When your melt pool formation is very large, this lead to dilution. Suppose I am doing cladding of some material on other. In that case scenario, if composition what desired is changed, then in that scenario I have to reduce the laser power. Second is that increase the velocity, means laser power if you are suppose not reducing, you just increase the velocity, so you will be giving less time for material to interact, so again the melting will be lower. So this problem can be solved. That is the primary approach. The secondary approach is that increase the scan line spacing. Again, line spacing you increasing means you are overlapping of the beam you are reducing, means suppose initially you have done 70%, 80%, you reduce to 50%, then this problem can be solved. Or increase the layer thickness or powder feed rate. If it is a powder bed fusion, layer thickness. If it is a direct energy deposition, powder feed rate, you just increase, then problem can be solved. Then next is residual stress and distortion. So you know, in additive manufacturing, this is one of the biggest challenge which comes, basically residual stress. And residual stress, why it comes? Because suppose on the substrate you are depositing some material, so substrate has heated and your powder has melted. The powder has melted and some neighboring area of the substrate which is not melted, it has a lower temperature and temperature has reduced. So the powder, it is cooling from the melt, so it is contracting, but your substrate is expanding. So due to contraction of the melt pool and expansion of the substrate, actually lead to formation of the residual stress in the build component. And this is a very important parameter which has to be minimized. Otherwise, your component cannot be used, because if a lot of tensile stresses is present, your fatigue property and other tensile property will be highly affected. So this has to be critically looked during 3D printing of any metallic component. Next is then how this can be minimized. There are two approaches. Reduce the scan vector length. Scan vector length means, suppose I am scanning when, so entire area you don't use a single laser line, means single laser you don't move from one end to other end of the job. Instead of moving, you can make cross board from a small area you can make and then print it smaller area. Then this problem can be minimized. I will come again. There is some thick board scanning pattern there. I will tell you how this helps. Okay. Or you use heated substrate, means when you heat your substrate, then also this residual stress can be minimized because the temperature difference is going to be less. Then also this can. Or you next is secondary approach is reduce the laser velocity. So these are the approaches actually during additive manufacturing has to be looked to minimize the different problem which we encounter normally. Okay. Now I will little bit touch upon, see you maybe I do not know how much of you are aware of much of metallurgy. Maybe most of you are mechanical, but still I will try to tell you how the microstructure is going to be different in additive manufacturing than conventional, and how this microstructure is going to play very important role on your final product component. So this is one of the important parameter one has to look during additive manufacturing, and here I will little bit explain you how different kind of microstructure develop during additive manufacturing process, and how they are actually different than conventional, and how they are detrimental, and to get the desired microstructure what we can do to make it. So during just basically solidification, suppose my liquid is there and it is solidifying. So this is the first curve you will see. This is the, suppose my melting temperature of material. So the liquid side will have always temperature higher than the melting. That's why it is in liquid form. And when you go to solid, when it is form solid, its temperature will be always less than the melting temperature. So the heat conduction generally what happens from the solid side happens. This is the word generally. But this kind of thing only happens when you cool the material very slow. Very, very slow. When you are cooling, then you will get a planar interface between liquid and solid. So this kind of thing happen only when the cooling is very slow. But in the case of laser additive manufacturing, this is not going to be case. Reason is that in laser additive manufacturing process, cooling rate is of order of 10 to the power 3 to 10 to the power 4 Kelvin per second. Means many times of the conventional process. So if this kind of what happened, that cooling lead to the liquid get cooled to temperature much below the melting temperature. The liquid will see the temperature much below the melting, because suddenly it has been cooled down and still it has not transformed to solid state, because it does not come, because the transformation from liquid to solid also require diffusion, and the diffusion is a kinetic driven process. And if you are cooling very fast, and a kinetic, which is a time dependent process, it is not getting enough time, my liquid will be cooled down to temperature much below melting temperature. And that scenario, what will happen? Your liquid will see less temperature than solid. So what happened during this scenario? My heat removal will start happening from the liquid side, and then under that condition, the straight interface will not form. This kind of protrusions will start forming in the metal, liquid, and they will be stable actually. And these protrusions will keep on growing to form a solid. So this kind of cooling actually lead to formation of a dendritic structure, or dendrites you can say. These are dendrites or columnar dendrites. So many things will happen. So this happens because of cooling rate. And here you can see I have just schematically shown how this happen. So when the actual temperature is much higher than the equilibrium temperature in liquid phase, you will end up having a planar interface. But if suppose your liquid temperature is less than the melting temperature, you just look at this region, then you can have this kind of protrusion formation. This is all cellular structure formation. You will, if you are interested in metallurgy, this kind of things are reported. Means cellular structure they have observed laser printed material. Okay, and suppose it is still lower than, means cooling is still faster, then you will see columnar dendrite, means some columns are formed, then arms started forming in this. This arms formation basically is due to anisotropy of the liquid crystal actually. So this growth happen along the certain directions only, that is called AG direction. So this kind of dendrites, columnar dendritic structure you will see, but there will be along the one line only. And suppose if it is still faster than that, you will see formation of different dendrite. They are randomly oriented, so they are called EQS dendrite. So this all microstructure formation depends on your cooling rate actually. So if cooling rate is very fast, you will have this kind. Even I will show you in a single laser beam profile, you can observe all three structures together. At the near substrate, you will see this. Just little away from substrate, you will see this. much away from the substrate, you will see, and this all depend on the temperature gradient and growth velocity of the liquid. Okay, so this is a come to next, the how this temperature gradient and growth velocity play a role on final product. So you can see, unlike the conventional process, laser additive manufacturing process is going to lead a formation of a very complex structure. So that depends on your temperature gradient and growth rate. So you will see that if your temperature gradient is very high, growth rate is very less, you will have a planar interface formation. And if your temperature gradient is low, growth rate is very fast, you will have aqueous dendrite formation, and rest will form in between. And second comes the G by R ratio, means growth velocity and the growth rate and temperature gradient ratio actually basically nothing but a cooling rate. So this cooling rate, if it is smaller, then you have a coarse structure, and larger you will have a fine structure. So basically fine structure formation happens when the growth velocity, temperature gradient is very high and growth velocity is less. And this criteria holds only when it is G by R is less than T liquid minus T solid by T liquid means liquidus temperature, T solid matlab solidus temperature divided by the diffusion coefficient of the material. So the slope of this curve is delta T by dL. So this is the actually under equilibrium condition this will happen. G by R is nothing but dt by dt. This is a cooling rate. Okay. G dot R, sorry, G dot R. G by R is the low G by R, high G bar, and this is G dot R. So G dot R is a cooling rate. Lower cooling rate, higher cooling rate. Lower cooling rate will give you coarse structure, higher cooling rate will be finer structure. So based on this, you can observe that what microstructure you are going to get finally. So you can see here that G by R decide the shape of the solidification point. Whether you are planar, cellular, or whatever, that will depend on the G by R. G dot R will define the dimension of the grain size. Means it is smaller grain size or larger grain size you are going to get. And then under cooling from the equilibrium melting temperature and solute diffusion coefficient also affect the mode of solidification. And next the solid state, some solid state phase. Suppose you have gone for melting. When melting to solid, you are forming intermediate. There are two solid state phase changes happening. Like you take simple example of iron. Suppose iron you have melted. When it has gone to liquid, first liquid to gamma, it will not form. It form delta. And delta to gamma and gamma to again alpha formation. So this intermediate phase transformation also going to decide your final microstructure. So all this play a role. So this is the one example of the planar interface. This is a cellular, and this is a columnar dendrite, and this is the aqueous dendrite microstructure. Generally we get that depends on the cooling rate and temperature gradient. Okay. Now in the laser, how it comes? You see, this is my laser beam. Suppose this is a substrate, I have melted it. Okay. So you will see just near substrate, you will see a planar interface. This is called fusion line. Here the first start the melting. Okay. Now it will start solidifying. So you will see that just near interface, you will have a epitaxial growth. Means like you see previous, like this. This is called epitaxial growth. So you will have a epitaxial growth. And then after epitaxial, you will see columnar dendrite formation, and then finally you will have a aqueous dendrite formation. So between aqueous dendrite formation and epitaxial growth, there is a competition between columnar to aqueous, columnar dendrite to aqueous dendrite formation. So this transition happens where that is called columnar to aqueous transition. So you will see same microstructure, different microstructure formation even in single laser beam. Means single laser melt pool, you will see all this kind of microstructure, and I will show you this more detail later on to have a better visualization. So you can see this is the one example. First layer, like I am depositing one first layer, first laser beam I have moved. If you cut the cross section, you will see just near its substrate you have this columnar growth. Okay, this is called epitaxial growth, and next you have a aqueous dendrite like this. And when you see when you are overlapping this laser beam, the overlapped region again has the columnar growth. And when you are again second layer you are depositing, again you can see that in even between two laser beam overlap this, and then two layer overlap this. So entire region has different microstructure than this. So you can see how the microstructural inhomogeneity is going to develop in a single component deposited. Okay, and here you can see a multi-layer deposited material. You see along the build direction and perpendicular to build direction. You can see along the build direction you will see this kind of microstructure, perpendicular to build direction you will see this kind of. So you see how the different microstructures are formed. But if you see a conventionally processed material, this kind of microstructure inhomogeneity is not formed. And if this kind of inhomogeneity microstructure is there, this is going to lead a problem in your mechanical strength. If the component is very critical, requirement is very critical, then this kind of microstructure are not required, and this has to be minimized by either post-processing treatment or optimizing certain process parameter. Okay, as the one example I am showing, like different microstructure formation. You can see here, this is on Inconel 718, just laser boriding is done. You can see that just near interface, point 1, you see cellular microstructure is observed. Okay, when you move in point 2, you see you have a columnar dendrites, and when you have moved to point 3, there is a transition from columnar dendrite to equiax dendrites. So you can see even in the single laser beam along the beam, this kind of microstructure difference. This reason is that just near interface, your temperature gradient is very high, growth rate is very less. And as you move here, temperature gradient is here very low, growth rate is very high. Due to this kind of microstructure inhomogeneity comes. Okay. So now what are the processes are there? Means how this microstructural issues can be solved. And because see, you are going to use finally for a some critical component, then this microstructure has to be looked critically, and how they can be solved, what are the different remedies are there, those has to be looked. Like see here, this is a 30316 material is a conventionally processed, and this is additive manufacturing process. You can see there is a well-defined polygonal grains are here in conventional process, but here you just see it is elongated grains, means lot of textures are there. Similarly, you can see 410L steel here, conventional method, well-defined polygonal grains are there, but in the additive manufacturing, textured grains are there. So this textured grain, people see how this is going to play an important role on mechanical strength. You see, the black commercial, this is a good ductility and good strength you can see. But the same steel, if you see, the red one, additive manufacturing, the very poor ductility and poor strength. Similarly, you can see the 316 additive manufacturer and 490 commercial. So you can see how the mechanical properties are going to be highly affected by just microstructure. So this is a very important parameter, and one has to look clearly during additive manufacturing. So then what are the remedies are there actually? Remedies are there, just optimize the process parameter. Then remedy is there, use oscillation stage, means rather static stage, use some ultrasonic vibration in space so that a melt pool can be homogenized. Then this kind of texture behavior can be minimized. Or use some inoculant by adding some foreign particles. Okay, increasing the inoculation chance by adding inoculant, means some foreign particle if you add, then random nucleation will happen in material, and that lead to formation of polygonal grains. And then either do heat treatment. Then next is sometimes inhomogeneous microstructures, like some composition, some segregation happens. There also that has to be minimized. For that, some thermomechanical treatment, like such as harsh isostatic pressing, HIP. Nowadays, HIP actually used as one of the secondary process in additive manufacturing to improve the property of the material. So now I will discuss one by one the effect of ultrasonic vibration on microstructure and mechanical property of titanium 6 aluminum 4 vanadium alloy. Just look, this is without ultrasonic vibration. You can see elongated grains with texture. But just if you do ultrasonic vibration, you can see nice polygonal grains are formed, and that has effect on your mechanical strength and ductility. See, mechanical strength has improved with this and have good ductility. Similarly, effect of additives like some inoculant. You can see without inoculant you have a elongated columnar dendrites formation. When you use some additive, you can see the polygonal grains formation. So this is one of the way this microstructure can be tailored using some processes. Okay. Then effect of post heat treatment. Suppose I have printed this material, lot of textures are there. If you do I do heat treatment, you can see the textures behavior are minimized and polygonal grains are formed. So this way also we can improve the property of the material. Next is effect of scan strategy on texture and grain orientation. See, I was telling you now somewhere that scan strategy play a very important role. Like you are scanning linearly, or you are scanning opposite 180 degree, or you scanning randomly, means at different zigzag scanning. That is called zigzag or chessboard. Means one place I was telling now how to minimize the residual stress. You reduce the scan vector. That is what? Rather scanning an entire area, I have reduced small step. By doing this, I can minimize textures in the material as well as the residual stresses. So this is the one way you can see when you are using this linear scanning, elongated grains are formed, and that is unidirectional grains. And when you are doing bidirectional, you will see that some extent of texture is minimized. However, if you use this kind of scanning strategy, the polygonal grains are formed, and this will have a better mechanical properties than these two. So you can see just by changing a scan strategy, the entire microstructure can be tailored. So this is one of the important steps normally people prefer in additive manufacturing. Then next comes inhomogeneous microstructures formation. Sometimes what happens when you are doing printing, what happens, some segregation of some heavy elements which is not diffusing in the material. Like I take nickel titanium, there are sluggish diffusion happens in nickel titanium. So suppose somewhere the titanium is segregated, and that lead to formation of some segregation, and that will lead to crack formation in the material. So what we do some HIP, that is a hot isostatic pressing treatment, then this kind of issue can be resolved, and then your homogeneous microstructure can be achieved. So this is one way to improve the property of the material. Okay. Now I come to a last slide to show you where today in terms of when you are doing engineering material, additive manufacturing and conventional process, where do we stand? Means I have told you so many advantages and disadvantages both, but with the time people are improving and additive manufacturing is slowly taking over the conventional process for several engineering material, and I will discuss one by one. You can see this is a cast alloy. Okay, simply cast aluminum alloy. You can see this is the yield strength and ductility elongation. You can see the AM of aluminum alloys has better ductility and better yield strength. These are the reported data plotted. That is called APSI diagram. Okay, so these data show that AM has much better advantage than cast aluminum alloys, casting process. So this is slowly people are. Similarly, you take titanium aluminum alloy. Okay, in titanium aluminum alloy also you will see with additive manufacturing, some report shows it has a good yield strength but poor ductility. But there are certain processes you can see here. These are the things where they have got good ductility as well as the better strength. Similarly, you take nickel alloys, you take low alloy steel, you take cobalt, chromium, moly alloys. You will see that this dotted line actually conventional and solid line are actually your additive manufacturing. You will see that nickel, in case of nickel alloys, people have achieved by optimizing process parameters and other things better strength and better ductility than conventional process. So additive manufacturing is progressing nicely and it may take over in future. Okay. Second thing you can see here also is the same thing. This is your titanium 6 aluminum 4. This is aerospace material. You can see the cast structure have design property like here elongation this much and strength this much, but you will see that additive manufacturing has covered wide range of this. Means it can start up to this ductility is also achieved, and even you can see in the cast alloy solution treated and aged also they are limited to this. So additive manufacturing is covering entire range by optimizing certain process. This is your laser metal melting deposition hai, and this is your direct metal direct energy deposition. This is your selective laser powder bed fusion. Means you see powder bed fusion has even much better area, means covering the much better elongation and strength than the direct energy. And you can see that in this is one of the important specialized. So in future, this additive manufacturing is really going to replace the conventional process. So with this, I will stop. Thank you very much.
If someone has any question, he can ask. He or she may ask if they are having any confusion.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your time and such an informative session. If anyone have any query, he or she may ask now. No? Okay, then on the behalf of ME department and all the participants, I, Dr. Vishwas Grover, propose a vote of thanks for our guest speaker, Dr. Arun Kumar Rai, who spared time for us despite of his busy schedule and give a very informative talk. Okay, and the topics you have discussed during the sessions are very much helpful and research oriented, sir.